Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our summer version of the Child USA film series. We are so excited tonight to be able to welcome the director and the co-creators of Procession, which is one heck of a moving and creative movie about the challenges and the triumph sometimes that a survivor has to face. I'm Marcy Hamilton. I'm the CEO and founder of Child USA. We're a nonprofit think tank, and one of the things we care the most about, as anybody in this audience who's ever talked to us knows, is statute of limitations for child sex abuse victims. This is a story about the need and the beauty and the soul of the survivors that fight for justice. And we are honored to have each and every one of you with us. Let me just, we've got a group, so I'm going to welcome as a group, and then we'll start our conversation. I'm thinking we'll have a chat for like 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. If you have questions while you are viewing, feel free to put it in the chat. Jillian Ruck, our executive director, is our director tonight, and she will gather the questions and make sure that we get to them. So let me just say that Procession is one of those really powerful and gripping documentaries that once you start watching, you have to watch the whole thing. And for many of you who have watched it, I'll bet you've also watched some of the other documentaries in this space. And the truth is, this is one of the most creative that I've ever seen. So let me start by welcoming the director with us tonight, and that's Robert Green. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us all. Thank you.
So let me just quickly ask you before I introduce, they're called co-creators. They're kind of cast and co-creators, which is great. But how did this start?
Well, first of all, I want to say just thank you for anyone who watched the film and is joining this conversation. I just want to give a little setup that, we're in a very, very different place than anyone who just pushed play and then just stopped the film. You're talking to a group of people, group of guys here that are on this Zoom that really love each other, and we've gone through a lot. The film premiered just over a year ago, or just under a year ago, and we've been able to talk about this film a bunch. So that, just to sort of set the emotional place where we all are, we've gone through something together and come out on the other side and feel very victorious, which might not be exactly where the viewer is at this particular point with the film. So it's just always worth noting that. It started with me thinking about how the previous films that I had been making and working on were missing something, we're lacking something. And what that thing is, it's very easy to put a camera on someone and ask them to tell their story. But, having a very, at the end of the process, I often have a very harsh feeling that, well, what was that ultimately for? It's important to tell stories. It's always important to tell stories. But I know, having made many films, that the camera and the presence of the camera and the editing process and the whole thing can really affect the people who participate and decide to be on screen much more than we really discuss. And so just thinking about that, I was in this sort of mindset of like, well, maybe we could do something to help someone for once, rather than just depict or document or show a story, but we can collaborate. And my films have been working towards this idea of collaborating and co-creating with people on screen for a while. And then I saw the press conference that Michael and Mike and Tom and Rebecca Randalls, the lawyer that has worked with all these guys, and it all kind of went together. And so we went to Rebecca, and one of it really should be said that none of the trust that we were able to build to create the project would happen without Rebecca Randalls, because the guys all trusted her first and foremost. And we were smart enough not to call Michael and say, "Hey, Michael, you want to be in this movie?" We went through Rebecca, and part of the reason why we went through Rebecca was because we wanted to be told no if the idea was garbage, right? Like if it was just a terrible, stupid idea, I wanted to be told it was a terrible, stupid idea from the beginning. And frankly, my original version of it was pretty dumb, and so we just, that was the process. We went through months and months and months of talking about it before we even reached out to the guys. And then Dan was just going to be the location scout it's like one of the most important parts of any movie. But then we started talking. It's like, man, you got to be on camera. And he's like, I don't know if I want to. Okay, let's go. So there was a lot of, it just started to really get the ball started rolling really with talking with Rebecca. And then we were off and going at that point.
Love it. Love it. So let me introduce, we have 4 of the 6 brave survivors that entered this therapy documentary amazing space. And let me start with Michael Sandridge.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So, so were you the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth to join in the whole lineup of being willing to do it?
Actually, Robert hasn't released the top 10, so I have no idea. And when Rebecca called me, it was April 1st. So I thought it was like an April Fool's joke. I burst out laughing because she has this weird sense of humor.
That's not Rebecca, but okay.
Yeah. Well, she has a very odd sense of humor. I thought really seriously. I started laughing. I go, who would want to see it? It's depressing. Really? I can't believe it. No, she said, it's not a joke. Come in and just hear what he has to say. And then I asked, did you research this guy? And she said, absolutely. And so that's what started me coming in and meeting Robert and Bennett and Rob and the whole team. And, as Robert said, once Rebecca trusted him, then it was an automatic for all of us because we trust her so completely.
She's amazing. She is literally a force of nature in a state that just doesn't want accountability for the bad institutions. But she and I have worked together on SOLs in Missouri again and again. We've done a brief to the United States Supreme Court. So I do love Rebecca, and I'm so glad that you guys had the chance to work with her. She's amazing. So
Yes.
let's see. Ed, well, bless you, Ed.
Thank you.
He's already allergic to us, which is fine. It's fine. Talk to my staff. Most pretty allergic to me. So Ed, so we were just talking, I'm just introducing each of you. And just wanted to hear a little bit about, well, so what was the scenario that got you involved? Which one talked to you, and what was the system?
Well, the $50,000 check is what got me. Oh, wait, you guys didn't?
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. Thank you for that.
No, I believe what Michael said is once Rebecca vouched for Robert, as dodgy as he seemed in person, no, I'm making fun of it, but we were all very trepidatious. And my wife said, there's no way we need this in our life right now. She knew, what not only the emotional energy, but just the time, and so she just said, really, we're not, as a family, we're not ready to engage at this level. And I said to her, I think it might help. I could use like some, I want to meet these guys. And then I came out, and I said to Robert, I don't really want to be in the film, but I do think the film should be made, and I'm willing to contribute in ways that I could, but I didn't want to be on the screen, and I didn't want to commit at that level. And then Robert was like, okay, can we film you, today? And little by little, he was baby steps, but then he was also always very trustworthy, and whatever he said, he did. And he also was never pushy. He was always like, how would you like to do this? Here's what I'm trying to do. it was always a collaboration with our collective comfort and intention first, And then he also said, if something gets on film and you want it out, it's out. There's not even, we're not even debating it. So
And that rarely happens with a movie, right? You
right.
see what made it and what didn't make it on the cutting room floor when they show you, here it is.
Yeah.
And that can be traumatizing. So that had to be a relief.
Yeah. And the other thing was that he had a storyteller's sensibility, which I really appreciated as I got to know him. And he had never, the other thing that I was adamant about is never have any salacious quality or any voyeuristic quality to what we were doing. And if that ever came up, we all, I think, would have been just hit the eject button.
Yeah.
And with Robert, it was consistently, we're talking about now, and what happened is a thing, but we're not like exposing that. We're talking about now,
Right.
and that focus was, it was a revelation for me. And
he had
I
a
can tell
natural,
you-
he had a
Yeah, no,
natural empathy. It was just an amazing part of him. It's
Yeah.
very rarely seen. The caring and empathy was like so good it was almost fake. We, Ed goes, we couldn't
Yeah.
believe it.
Spoken like
And
a true survivor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it took a while, but it came out. And with the other people he used to the film also, they were amazingly empathetic and caring, which if they hadn't been, I think it would have been a no.
Yeah.
And my wife is a
So
tough
Mike,
nut to
let me
crack.
go to, let me skip over to Mike Foreman. So Mike, is all this true?
Yeah. For me, Rebecca called me up and said there was a filmmaker that might be interested in talking to us, and I was all in from that phone call, only because you can read my story at IamNotCatholic.com, and I was treated just horribly by the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas, and it was just unbelievable. So I thought, if anything, this could be an avenue to or an outlet for my anger and my hatred that was building up. It was very, and it was also very therapeutic for me, because again, the way they treated me and how they just lie and just flat out lie. They lie. I have a senior Catholic archbishop named Joseph Nauman. He wrote me a letter. This is all on my website, IamNotCatholic.com. And he clearly lied about my credibility. He reached out to another responsible party, the Capuchins, and lied to them about my credibility. And then at the end of this letter, this senior Catholic archbishop actually lied about his own sincere prayer. And I dissect that letter on my website, IamNotCatholic.com. So when Robert came along and this project came along, it was like oxygen for me. I mean, what a breath of fresh air. Holy crap.
I love it. I love it. So, and Dan, you want to attest to all this, or are you going to pull the window open and show us everything, the truth, and
Oh, I like her.
It really went down that way. I always tell everybody, like, I remember when Rob and Bennett were on the phone with me trying to explain to me how we were going to do this, because I was searching for locations. I'm actually contacting churches, and I didn't have a definitive story that I was trying to tell these people, like, we're going to film this in your church. And so I was asking, I wanted some cut and dry answers from them. And Robert was like, well, it's going to evolve. We're going to build this together, and it's going to, we don't really have a defined storyline yet. And this is early stages. So I haven't even met the other guys yet. And I had a moment, and I had to warn him and Bennett. I was like, you guys don't understand. Every one of us wakes up every day, and the minute our feet hit the floor, we think someone's out to get us. Someone is going to screw us over that day. Somehow someone's taking advantage of us. And we got to fight that every day just so we can interact with regular society. So I was trying to warn Robert, like, we're all kind of wound up naturally. So to say you don't have a storyline yet, it really
That's a
made me
problem.
worry. But then when we all got together that first, like in the film, you see the first meeting of all of us initially meeting each other. And Robert does have a way of putting you at ease, and he'll look you straight in the eye and tell you exactly what he's thinking and feeling. And you know, he's not hiding anything. And that goes a long way with us.
It's a beautiful thing. That's
In the very beginning, I actually asked Robert if I could use profanity in the movie.
seemed to work out okay.
Oh
guess.
yeah, that gave us the R rating. No, I'm kidding.
I
Yeah,
want
no
to.
doubt. No doubt.
I just want to add. I just want to add before Joe talks. I just like what Dan's talking about there is just an example of how the film really worked, which was, you know, we've all dealt with things in life, but there's different between, you know, dealing with your own childhood trauma and being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, right? At this level. Totally different. And so so I could study whatever that means, what it means to be a survivor. That means nothing. And when Dan says, I say,
hold on a minute, Bob. Guys, can you put yourselves on mute, and then we won't have the feedback, and then except you, Robert, don't you?
Yeah. And I, you know, Dan could be saying, I could be saying, hey, we're making a documentary. Of course, we don't have a storyline. And Dan's forthcoming was just an example of how all the guys, we all related, really. You know, it was an education process for me every step of the way. So all these nice things that everyone's saying, I appreciate them. I love you all, but it's also, you all know, I had no idea what I was doing. And the only thing I knew to do was listen very intensely when anyone spoke about how they were feeling in the moment. So I just had to insert that because it's lovely to hear this, but it's also true. And you all know this, and you're just being nice, that like, it wasn't wisdom that I brought. What I did bring was, I think Michael says it the best, like empathy. And I brought I brought listening, and then I also brought enthusiasm, because that's when, you know, just being excited about the idea got other people excited. And that, you know, that's just, I just wanted to insert that because I almost couldn't take the nice things everybody was saying. Okay. Sorry, Joe. Go for it.
Well, so far we're totally believing him, but you know, Joe has the trump card here. So Joe, well, how did you get into this fascinating movie?
I almost missed it. I was in full retreat mode and had changed my phone number, my email, and was shutting everybody out once again.
Wow.
As I was prone to do. And then one day I thought, I hadn't checked my email, my old email, and there could be something important in there. And there was email after email from Rebecca trying to get a hold of me. And so I called her. She told me about the film. And I'll be honest, I just thought, yeah, let's make a movie. It'll be fun. I really didn't think it would be anything more than a fun experience.
Yeah.
But when I went to Kansas City 2 days later, that's how close that was. I came in 2 days before and met the guys. There was this immediate connection with other abuse survivors. And it was a connection that I had never had before, and it was new. And I didn't know what to do with it. I just knew I didn't want to let that go. And that feeling that the other guys gave me, the trust that Robert just carries with him, and just Sasha and Rebecca, I was all in from that point forward.
That's pretty amazing. So you had kind of decided that before this started that you were basically going to deal with all of the trauma by just retreating protecting yourself. Was that the situation?
It's a very damaging cycle that I tend to do, honestly, and honestly, I've not done that since we started filming several years ago. I would make all these steps forward. I would go to counseling, and then I'd like hit this wall where I just can't go any further. And I wouldn't mean to. It was
of course not.
Almost an unconscious thing. It'd be like, oh, let's just make a new email. I'm tired of my phone number, and then I'm not going to take your calls. and I'm not going to return your emails. And I retreat down to just my immediate family. And sadly, even sometimes in the past, I would shut out my wife or my kids even. And then I'd realize what I was doing and I'd shake it off and I would put myself out there again. And so this was just one more cycle of putting myself out there once again and trying something different. And it worked. It was very successful in my life. It's just has changed everything about me.
Amazing. Could you describe in your own words to the audience what each of you were doing in the film? I mean, this is an innovative approach.
Is that directed to me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What each of us was doing, I was doing whatever Robert told me to do, and which was really kind of hard probably on Robert, because he was so free on what we wanted to do. He was open to our thoughts, our ideas, and ultimately you saw in the film how it all kind of played out, and we ended up supporting each other and all that. But then that's what the main thing for me was that support. Was once it started going, and once I learned to let some people back into my quiet circle, that was that connection that I needed. That's what was there for me. Was I wanted to be there for these guys. I do love these guys. I do love Robert. Sorry, Robert, but I do. What they have brought into my life is just glorious and wonderful. And I found myself not just wanting to do it for them, but as this carried on, I began to see that the feelings that I have and the healing taking place could then go out to everybody else, you know, that others that can see this film could possibly find that as well.
Love it. Love it. So, you know, we emphasize, because we're a think tank, right? And we've got a legal department, a social science department, and we had to decide early on in our social science department, what would we call someone who had been afflicted with child sex abuse? Because, you know, a lot of people were calling them all survivors, and the scientists were saying, calling all of them victims, right? Because not every victim becomes a survivor, tragically. But this film seems to me the story of how victims can become survivors. And part of surviving seems to be connecting. So let me just throw that out to any of you. How was it that you were able to literally change through the course of the film and become, you know, an army of survivors together, rather than individuals who were angry or unhappy or unable to cope?
For me, in the movie, what I was doing very simply was venting. I was venting, and I was trying to expose, you know, and bring to light to the evilness of the church. And for me, when we went to Telluride, I was nervous of driving out there because I didn't know how this was going to go. You never know. And after it played Friday night, we got a standing ovation, and then we went to a bar and all these awesome reviews came out. I think that might have been the best night of my whole life, to be honest with you. That was awesome.
That's pretty amazing. Anyone else? You know, that journey from victim, everybody starts as a victim, but then becoming a survivor?
I really feel like Ed put us together in that initial meeting. Ed was the one that broke down the big barrier that we all had when we walked in that door. And he, I mean, here's this professional, you know, full-grown man who said it exact same thing that we've all been feeling all our lives. And the fact that he could voice it in that meeting let us know that it was okay. And that was the initial spark that led us all to start bonding together.
One of my favorites, excuse me, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie was when Ed says, "I'm a New York City contractor." And I could chew the balls of a union electrician to get my money back, but I can't say what happened to me when I was 13 without. I mean, that just says it all right there for me. I mean, you know, just brutally honest.
Thank you.
In an odd way, most victims don't want to be around other victims,
right?
Because they trigger each other. And Robert weaved a story and allowed us to weave our own stories where we were around other people. We didn't have to be, like Ed said, this deep vein of shame running through us, and we could figure it out. Robert's technique was highly unusual, which of course drove me crazy. No script, nothing. Just do what you want. And I looked at him and going, are you kidding me? It's impossible. And it was just like, do what you want to do. And no one's ever said, say what you want to say. And throughout the whole process, everything was being validated. Like Mike got to be heard and believed, which had not happened to him before. I think Robert allowed us to be validated in certain ways that the normal victim survivor has never had the opportunity.
Right.
But you can also follow the example. Like we met some people over the weekend, and it's like they want to go back to their places too and face that kind of thing. So it's really a healing thing. And I always wanted hope at the end, and I hope that comes through a little bit. But okay. So
Yeah. But have you heard from other survivors through this process? Sometimes that can be overwhelming. Sometimes that can be a wonderful thing. How has that experience been?
Well, Mike is the sex symbol of the movie. So he has a lot. But we have heard about a lot of other people. I have, and I'm sure each one of us has, I think. So you guys can talk.
I had a lot of.
No, I've had victims of. No,
Go ahead, Ed. Ed, go ahead.
Well, I had victims of heart. They saw the film. They were victimized by him, 10 years after I, was, and that they're not interested in coming forward, and their wife doesn't know, and they just wanted to reach out to me and let me know how helpful it was to know that they're not alone. And this is, and I got variations of that from half a dozen people. And that kind of the idea that those people aren't going to take it any further is sad to me.
Yeah.
But also I completely understand it. If you haven't told your wife yet, you're not gonna do that right now in Wyoming without a support network. And so, maybe one day they would, but just the idea that our little project blossomed into something that is helping people that we don't even know who they are. And I know, I guarantee that for every person who reaches out to me, there's 10 people that don't, but are just as impacted. And so that was never what I was trying to do. I was like greedy and selfish to try and help myself. And then to find out that what Robert has done is weave this into this thing that everybody who sees it, like even people that aren't, they're like, oh my God, now I understand why, cousin Jimmy was always messed up. They've never been abused, but they know someone who was. And now all of a sudden things make sense. And we didn't dream, there was no part in the making of the film where we were like, oh, let's try and help those people. It's just a side benefit to how we did it.
In a weird way, we've become priests because people come up and confess things, and it's like, okay, and we have to figure out how to deal with that and how to say, well, maybe you should talk to so-and-so and that kind of thing. But it's like the guy that cuts my hair. I saw the movie last night, and I was abused too. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you're by my ears with these scissors. Are you that upset or what's going on? and he starts laughing. But people just start talking to you about it because a lot of victim survivors, they just haven't been heard and they don't know anyone else. And so hopefully, like Dan's experienced it, Joe has, we all have, to a degree that it's really weird. It's a responsibility, but it's worth it.
It has to be somehow gratifying, right? So how long did it take to make the film?
We got postponed for COVID, so it was like 3 years. And for me, my story on my website, since Telluride, I've had over 4,200 people go and read my story, or at least read some of it. And at the end of my story, there's a link to my email, and I say, please send any comments. And I've gotten a lot of positive emails, and I was ready for some negative emails. To this day, I have not gotten a single negative email, not one, which is kind of surprising because in my story and in the movie, I don't hold back at all. Right.
Well, I think Mike, you got an authenticity that is just inherently trustworthy. So I'm glad the idiots didn't do that. You know, I worked with Lynn Abraham, the DA in Philly, on the first major grand jury report. And the day we released it, we were all attacked as being anti-Catholic. You know, that's all it was. We're just a bunch of anti-Catholics trying to make trouble for the church. And that's, of course, that's total baloney. But that was in 2005. 17 years later, I think it's hard to criticize someone with what you're doing. And so I'm glad to hear that the trolls did not get stupid.
I was contacted recently by a survivor, and she, man, we really kind of hit it off on the phone. She started a online petition to do away with the statute of limitations. And I would like everyone to know that you could please go to change.org to sign that petition to do away with the statute of limitations. And I'm going to go get a lot of yard signs made up about this. And it's going to say, unlike the Catholic Church, Jesus Christ would never hide behind or support the statute of limitations. Please sign the petition to do away with the SOL at change.org.
Dan, tell him what happened to you on the weekend, that guy, Ryan.
You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to Dan.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
This last weekend, we were at a SNAP convention in Denver, and it was our second night in. And I noticed a guy who was like on the periphery of our group, and he had no other focus. He wasn't doing anything else but listening. He was just listening to all of us talk. And so I realized that there was something there. So I went and introduced myself and started talking to him. And he literally was there with his family. He was just on vacation, and he just happened to see the SNAP convention. And it turns out he's a survivor. And he's never spoken to anybody.
Wow.
Like, he's told his wife, and that was it. And I brought him over to the table with all the leaders of SNAP, and we just incorporated into the whole evening. And he had some breakthroughs just sitting with us.
That's beautiful. I mean, the SNAP events from the beginning have been special places where people could find some refuge. But early on, the attacks were so harsh against the survivors from all sides that there would be people coming in and leaving without telling anybody. So that's pretty moving, that he felt that kind of trust and he needed to talk to you. So
I can say the first time I went to a SNAP meeting, I stayed on the back wall and I left early.
God bless you. Yep. But that's the whole MO. Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked with Barbara Blaine from the beginning. And it's a really, really wonderful organization. So, okay, well, obviously I would talk with you guys for the next 2 hours. I have many more questions, but Jill is telling me I'm supposed to let people ask questions besides me, which I think is annoying. But anyway, Jill, so what questions do we have?
Did you get I sent it to you in a text. Did you get that?
Oh, well, I was not looking at my phone. I like these guys. Okay. Okay, you ready? Hey friends, this is Sally Z from Coptic Survivor. Just wanted to say hi, and I'm so proud of you guys for having such incredible courage to share your stories with the world. Your resilience has inspired me to go back to the house where I was abused at age 12. Any advice?
Dan or
Hey.
Joe?
Take somebody with you would be a very important thing. Someone that you trust and love. It can be overly emotional. So you may need just that support to walk through.
Got it.
Kind of gave me
Yeah.
that support in the van in the movie when me and Dan went and looked for the place where I was assaulted. Exactly, Dan. That's right.
The other thing I would say is what we were kind of able to do is not have a preconceived notion of what the return would do or mean for us, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you go with someone, as we're all saying, you know, as Dan said, go with someone that you trust, but let yourself just be open to how you're going to react. I remember when we went in Wyoming back to this wilderness area where I had been molested, and Michael and I were standing there on a rock, and he said, "Do you want to scream?" And it was a great question. And by kind of, you know, being open to the experience there, standing on the rock in the wind with the trees, and then having him say, "Do you want to scream?" I realized from thinking about his question and thinking about how I felt that I actually did not. I didn't want to scream. I just wanted to be done with the visit.
Yeah.
I was closing something from 40 years ago, but I didn't need to scream, and it was just very simple, you know, and I didn't try and torque the experience to how I thought it needed to be for me today.
Right.
I just sat there and let it wash over me in a safe, you know, with my friend Michael next to me, and I got a big hug, and then we just walked away quietly. And it was, you know, that's one thing I would recommend, is just be open to how, don't think you have to have some response, because you might not have that response, and you don't need to shoehorn the experience into a preconceived notion.
I think
You know,
Joe
just be-
has one of the best
Let me, yeah, I wanted to
experiences.
ask Joe. Yeah, Joe, so advice for our friends?
In addition to all that, don't push yourself beyond what you can handle.
Yeah,
You can damage yourself while trying to get to this end goal of healing, and it's not worth setting yourself back. So know your limits, listen to your limits, obey your limits. But I will say this, in the movie we talked some about my nightmares, like the green-eyed demon and all that, and it all had to do with that stupid house at Lake Viking. And the day we went was the day that my nightmares stopped, and I had immediate proof of something good happening because of going back and reclaiming that space. And I still have not had a nightmare of Lake Viking since that day, which was actually 3 years ago this week. And
wow.
I used to fear going to sleep because I knew something bad would happen. And it took a long time of, you know, like, this isn't real, this isn't really happening. You know, the demon's still going to come back. And he still has not come back. And I no longer fear going to sleep. So my trip to Lake Viking reclaimed that power and was a great move for me.
That's amazing. Well, okay, so we have another question here. This is from Dr. Elizabeth Goldman, who is, we are one of her biggest fans here at Child USA. She says, your brotherhood and sincerity is more beautiful than any priestly service I've ever experienced. You all deserve the kinship and validation that making your terrific movie provided to each of you. I love the power, genuineness, support, and anger. So you did good, Mike, in your movie. An awesome job, and thank you so much for sharing your stories with the world. So you can all pat yourselves on the back. You got an A+ from Elizabeth. That's a big deal. Liz is really amazing.
Is that the
Um,
golf clap thing?
Yeah. You all can decide gold star, you know, whatever you choose amongst you that shows that you've achieved something. So let me ask Dan. So what's up with the shaving your head at the end? That's a question.
I was very concerned about anonymity. I was trying to hide behind that big ugly beard. And we had a break because of COVID, and there was just a calm came over me and a realization that I don't want to hide anymore. And I wasn't ashamed anymore. Like, seriously, just this weekend at the SNAP convention, the first person that came and approached us and asked us, she said, "What is the result of you filming this movie?" And I said, "Well, there's no magic sword or anything that just took everything away, but I can talk to you about it now."
Mhm.
And that's everything. The fact that I can discuss it openly, and then now reach out to other survivors and try to help people, that's the big benefit. But the beard was a mask for the movie.
Okay. All right.
Well, you were also torturing your wife, remember? I'm just kidding.
There was that.
You said that in the movie, remember? Just torture my wife.
Yep.
Well, a lot of ways to do that, speaking as a wife, but we'll get off that topic. So Ed, someone would like to know, do you have concrete steps that you would recommend that would solve the Catholic Church's problems? Oh, wait, we don't have Ed with us. No, we
Yeah.
do. Here's Ed. Oh, oh, and here's even more questions. Okay, Ed, it's all yours.
Well, you know, whatever steps people might think to take, I would say be very prepared to be disappointed and be very prepared to face the inertia and the like the resistance to change of institutions, you know? So you're going to be there, as I have been, you know, talking to the police department in Cheyenne, Wyoming, telling them that they need to arrest my abuser. And they're like, well, you know, it was a long time ago. And you're there looking at them going, well, in Wyoming, there is no statute of limitations. So a long time ago doesn't matter, actually. And then you have a detective, you know, one detective said to me, "You're just trying to get a check out of the church, aren't you?" And, you know, it's like, well, what part of your investigation is that?
Right.
Why, you know? And then the other thing was this sort of, you know, like asking the rape victim how short her skirt was on the night of the event. And you're like, well, no, I am not. I was 13. I was 14. I'm not to blame for what happened to me.
Mhm.
And to Dan's point of like, I had a detective shut me down. Now, this was 20 years ago when I first came forward, and I said, I don't have what it takes in me to talk to these people and convince them to do their job. And now I do. After that film, I have no trouble talking to a detective and saying to him, you need to arrest this guy. I've given you evidence. My story was in the paper with my name attached to it. 12 additional men have come forward based on my publicity. And they have said, they've been able to say to the detectives things like, there's a very particular tile pattern in the bishop's bathroom, in the shower. And how do they know that? How would a 14-year-old be aware and have this, imprinted in their brain after 40 years,
Right.
they can remember? And the detectives are like, well, you say one thing, he says another thing. And I'm like, yes, but then there are 14 other who were young men at the time saying exactly the same thing, who we don't know each other, we've never met. And so that preponderance of the evidence and that string of bad acts has to count for something, you
Right.
know? And I now am not ashamed to say to a detective that, this is what happened to me, because I'm not to blame. And I have a daughter now who doesn't know the gist of the film. What I said to her is that when I was your age, some grown-ups were very inappropriate. She understands inappropriate behavior between adults and her privacy. And so, without going into detail, I don't want to go into it with her at age 13.
Right.
But what I realize is she's the age that it happened, that started for me. And so having that, like looking at her and going, she is not responsible. If somebody did something to her, she's not the one who needs to make it stop. And so for the first time, I'm able to kind of go, oh, I remember my 13-year-old self differently. But objectively, a 13-year-old is not in charge.
No, and
And
in
so-
fact, the brain doesn't fully develop the part of the brain needed to make executive decisions till age 25. A 13-year-old is a kid.
Yeah. And I was a
And that
very
first detective was horrible. That would make
frightened and
you think
vulnerable.
you failed. That detective failed in such a horrible way.
Yeah.
So this has been an amazing discussion, and I am so sad that Netflix would not give us permission to show the film. I think they made a mistake, and it would have been something great for the audience. But Robert, first of all, I want to thank every one of you for taking the time and for explaining what you've explained. I know there will be more survivors who watch this, who are not necessarily here tonight. People seem to go on vacation this time of year. I don't get it. But you made a big difference with the film, but you're making a big difference as you keep talking and you go to SNAP meetings. So I want to thank every one of you. But I wanted to close by saying to Robert, so what's next? Seems like you kind of scaled the heights here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're gonna be, whatever film we make next will be a lot simpler. Let's just say that.
Well,
Honestly, because I don't know. I mean, what I really can say is next is that the generosity and everyone's talking about what I was able to do as the filmmaker, and I think when they talk about me, they're really talking about the entire team,
Right.
what we were all able to do. These guys know that. I mean, this is my brotherhood and my family, and Michael was the first person that I was able to talk to about some things that happened in my life. Not exactly the same thing, but certainly some opening up that has changed my life. And I owe my life to these guys in every way. And it's that's just what I hope people take from the film, really, is that you don't have to make a movie, you don't even have to go back to your place. Like, I started therapy after the film, not because I was so traumatized by the film, but because I knew, well, I just knew there was a the possibilities were there. Like, if Dan can do that, if Ed, if like Mike, Joe, Michael, my God, if like you guys can do this, then I can pick up the phone and start talking to someone who I need to talk to, right? And what's been crazy is that the echoes of what I'm doing with my own childhood experiences, I just think back to when Joe, and Dan says, "There's your wall, go through it," and just how universal that is. Actually, it's not, these guys are extraordinary, and to be a survivor is an extraordinary thing. It's also, as we know from all the hundreds of people who have come up to us, not that extraordinary. And then beyond not that extraordinary in the worst sense, it's not that extraordinary in a sense that, everyone is learning how to grow and how to develop as people and how to confront this moment, these moments in their lives. Right. And just, I hold on to Dan saying to Joe, "Here's your wall, go through it." And Joe, with Michael next to him, walking right up to that porch. I hold on to that every single day, like in every way that I can hold on to it. And it's just inspiring to me in ways that I'm having a trouble articulating now.
No, beautifully. I want to thank
Means a
every
lot.
one of you for making this journey, for sharing this with so many people, because I know we talk to so many survivors. They need voices like yours. And, we're recommending Procession. And we
Thank
really
you so much for that. Thank you for that.
We wish you the best, all of you. And thanks for coming tonight. So I hope you all take care of yourselves, stay in touch, and everyone in the audience and you guys join us for our annual event in November. We're celebrating the civil rights of children. And
Wow.
I wish you'd had those rights when you were kids. So thank you so much. Have a
Can I
good
Thank
night.
please
you.
say one last
Bye.
thing?
Yeah, please.
I would just like to point out to everybody that's listening, I don't see how anyone could possibly debate this. Could possibly dispute this. Jesus Christ would never donate money to the Catholic Church, never. I would love to debate that with Archbishop Joseph Naumann or anyone, and of course, Naumann won't debate that because he can't debate that, because Jesus Christ would never donate money to the largest, oldest, and most evil pedophile ring on earth. How could
And
anyone,
on that note, Mike,
how could anyone
you get the
possibly?
last
Yeah.
word.
We'll get that one. Is that the last word?
No, we're welcome. One more is welcome.
Okay, I'd like to say one last thing. I agree with Mike also, but if anyone wants to contact any of us, we're here to listen to them and hopefully help them. And with your organization too, it's a great organization. And I think that's what the film was all about, is reaching out and helping other people. And we're here to listen, whatever you need to do, just no judgment, just, contact any of us, except for Robert. Now that he's a big shot, it's probably not good.
That's why I
And
asked.
thank you for that.
I thought we
Thank
could
you
all
for
go
the
with him to
opportunity.
the Academy Awards, right? So
Well,
we got
that's-
him while he's, just
Well,
normal size.
That was a Catholic conspiracy against us, I'm convinced. No, just.
Oh, geez. Yeah, let's not get started about that.
No,
All
no,
right,
no.
guys, thank you. Have a wonderful evening,
You
and
too.
we're looking forward to sharing this.
Thank you
Great.
so
I
much.
appreciate
Mark.
it.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Bye.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you
Bye-bye.
all. Bye.
Bye.